Yes, this is absolutely true. And Facebook seems to be the preferred place for women to distract themselves away from their husbands these days. At least that's a big complaint that I get. One of the things that I do tell people, though, is that if you time, right? Everybody has this shortage of time. At least it's a big complaint. I've even had couples tell me they can't find the time to talk with me to fix their marriage. So that shows their level of commitment. But time isn't a factor if somebody is truly committed. And I tell people that the idea is, can you stop time with your partner? Can you make time stand still? And let me give you an example of what I mean by that. I came home one day, not too long ago, maybe a month ago, and my wife is in a frenzy. She's trying to take our son someplace, and she can't find her car keys. And I just happen to walk in the door. And so I'm just the observer to her stressed-out pace because she's running late. And so she finds her car keys, and she is striding by me. And I grab her, and I sweep her down, and I give her a kiss, and I say, "I love you, beautiful." And she starts giggling. Her complete mood changes, and she goes out the door. That took 2 or 3 seconds.
Absolutely.
So I was able to stop time, and this is why I want people to understand the stop time concept. You can do that any day, all day. You don't need time. It's that moment where you connect in a special way.
I love it. This is Happily Ever After is just the beginning on webtalkradio.net. I'm Leslie Dories, and I'm talking with executive coach and author Jeff Forte about the importance of intimacy to a healthy marriage and how you can increase it in yours. So if you're struggling in this area, then I invite you to take action right now. Do not wait another minute. Pick up the phone and give me a call or send me an email at Leslie, Lesli, at foundationscoachingnc.com. That's FOUNDATIONS, coaching, N as in Nancy, C as in Charlie.com, or call me at 919-924-0463, because your relationship, you don't have to be roommates. You can get the excitement back into your relationship. You can reignite the passion if you want to. We're talking about, are you committed to doing this? Because anything less is less than what you deserve. So, and as you just heard Jeff say, it doesn't have to take a lot. Sweep your partner off their feet. I love that idea, Jeff. I think that's absolutely wonderful, because people can change their mood in an instant. I mean, I know sometimes I'll be having a really crappy day, and my husband will come home, and he'll make a comment like that to me. He'll say something about, hey, beautiful, or whatever. And, I'll both roll my eyes and smile at the same time. And, I'll say something, and he goes, yeah, but I made you smile, didn't I? And it's like, yes, you did. And you can really switch moods that quickly if you're open to it.
Oh, this is absolutely true. The next one is this presence that we've talked about. Presence, compassion, empathy. For any men who are listening to this, your presence with your wife is essential in order for her to even begin to feel safe, to feel trusted, and certainly to feel valued. Your distracted presence begins to erode trust, begins to erode connection. We don't naturally recognize that as men. Right, because as men and women sometimes I think are different species. I mean, we do process things very, very differently, and being able to understand that there's nothing wrong with my partner just needs something different than I do, and being willing, and I think that's that empathy piece. And it goes both ways, because I think women can get pretty frustrated with their guys and not fully understand that men want to make women happy. They just don't necessarily know that the way they're doing it or they're going about it isn't that. But I do love this presence, both. And I do think that kids can create a problem. Now, like I said, I have two. They're grown now, but it's really easy to
distract with kids, and I think that's where women can sometimes Facebook children, that it's easier to be with their children than it is to try to help their husbands learn how they work.
Yeah, that's actually a great point. As you know, in any highly successful and highly intimate relationship, the partners have to be a priority for each other over their children. And the other reason for that is you want to model something special for your children.
Well, that's what you were saying at the very beginning, that you didn't see that. And I do think that that's what a lot of people don't see. I mean, I was a child at the beginning of the era when divorce became easier to get.
Sure.
And so, now we see couples that divorce and they think it doesn't impact their children, and it impacts them in subtle ways, especially if we're not seeing the affection. I mean, my daughter, when she was a baby, well, she wasn't a baby, she was probably a toddler, 3-4 years old, and any time my husband and I would be hugging in the kitchen, she would literally try to put herself in between us. And it was like, no, this is daddy time. This is it's like you can get a hug from mommy later, but right now daddy gets a hug.
Oh, good for you. That's great.
Yeah, and so, but it's important, and I do think it's almost blasphemy when we say that, because it's like, oh my gosh, put my partner before my children. And this is why I think my husband, now that we're quote unquote empty nesters, we're enjoying it. We're having a grand old time.
Well, you just mentioned something really important, because ultimately your children are going to leave the home.
Hopefully.
And it's going to be you and your partner. What's that going to look and feel like if you have devoted all your time, attention, and energy to your children? It's going to be a struggle.
Right. I talk about it as, they leave the home and you're sitting across the kitchen table, and it's like, who are you and what are you doing in my house? I mean, because I have no idea.
Yeah, absolutely. That's very true. And the next item on the 8 elements of intimacy is this playful banter, lightness, laughter. There's so much stress out there in the world that we really need more and more light, playful silliness in our lives. And that's one thing I love about my wife, is that she and I can just act like children with each other, tease each other playfully, and it's a way of deepening our connection.
It is, and you make a good point about teasing playfully, because I know sometimes people, there are certain things that I've had to tell my husband, that over there, that's not something I can be teased about. If you can stay away from that, you can tease me about all these other things, and I'm really good. But that area over there, that's not a place where I can be teased, and that's respected. I never had to explain or justify or whatever. It was just like, oh, okay, that's an off-limits area, no problem.
So let me elaborate for a moment. So for me, playful teasing is around sensuality.
Okay.
So it could be planting seeds about what you're going to do with them later on that evening. It could be planting seeds about how you view them, or how hot and sexy they look in whatever outfit they happen to be wearing, or whatever the case is. The playful teasing that I'm referring to is more sensual in nature.
Got it.
And this lightness and laughter is something that's truly important, because if I'm stressed and my wife is stressed, somebody's got to have the presence of mind to want to alleviate the tension. And so she is great at lightening things up, so that it's not always me who initiates that. But one person has to be willing to initiate playfulness, this light banter back and forth, the laughter. Other than that, it's kind of a dull existence.
Yeah, not a whole lot of fun. So I think we're now at the last one.
Yeah, the safety, comfort, and trust. And presence if a man is present, it helps bring feelings of safety, comfort, and trust. We have to be comfortable with each other. I remember in my first marriage, I went to Bermuda with my wife at the time, and I think we'd been married for maybe a year. And I got to Bermuda, and it's just me and her on this beach, and I am freaking out. Just the two of us? I don't know if I can handle that. Well, where is everybody?
What are we going to do? What are we going to talk about? Right.
I wasn't comfortable, just the two of us alone, isolated out in the wilderness, so to speak. That comfort factor is enormous. And feeling safe is obviously the ultimate way to higher levels of passion. If you don't feel safe, you're not going to have higher and higher levels of passion.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's absolutely impossible.
Yeah. And that leads to the last one, which was the sensuality and sexual activity. All the things we talked about, the affection, the physical touch, the feelings of connectedness and togetherness, the warmth, the deep feelings of being understood and valued, presence, empathy, the lightness and playfulness, the safety factor, all lead to heightened sensuality and greater experiences sexually.
Right. And because, yes, and that's one of the things that when these pieces are missing, and you were very clear at the beginning, if any of this part's missing, it is going to impact this end point. And then people are fighting about sex, and that's not necessarily what they're fighting about, but they're fighting about all the things that are getting in the way of it, which is really important because that's, again, people equate intimacy with sex, and it is so much more than that.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And here's kind of an interesting thing about affairs. Harvard did a follow-up study of over 20 years with men who had left their wives for another woman. At the time, it was just a man-focused thing. The data is about the same for women. The long-term sustainability of that affair partner that ended up being a relationship, they failed 93% of the time. Only 7% of the time did the man end up being long-term with this person they were having the affair with. So do you want to bet on a 93% loser? It looks like the grass is greener out there. It looks like you can feel this sense of connection or lust or whatever this thing is, but over time, if people are not aware of what's required, you're going to get right back to where you were.
Exactly, and that's one of the things. It's like, and that brings me to this point. It's like if it's easier for many people. Now, there are some cases where this is absolutely not true. The marriage has to end. It's not safe. It will never be safe, and people need to get out. But that's not most of the marriages. And even with an affair, if people understand what that was about and the fact that, like you said, you're heading into a much higher failure rate than if you didn't start out that way. But how do couples get into the habit of doing these 8 things if they haven't been doing them? Maybe they've been married 2 years. Maybe they've been married 10 years. Maybe they've been married 20 years. And there is this gap. There is this, sometimes it's a chasm between the two people. How do they start?
Well, one of the most important things that is lacking in a relationship is a vision. How do we want our lives to be together? We often have visions for our kids' education. We have visions of retirement, visions of vacation, visions of building this home and a second home, or whatever the thing, or visions of a career, right? We have this vision of all these things in our lives, but not necessarily a marriage. As I mentioned, in my first marriage, we're married. I'm good. Happily ever after.
Right. Nothing else needs to be done.
Exactly. I had this thought, which was, how do I want to feel when I'm with my wife? And when I talk about vision in my book, it is not so much what do we want to do, it's how do I want to feel when we're together. So I want to feel this deeply connected sense of intimacy and all these 8 elements that I referred to that we've talked about. I want to feel that connection with my wife always. And so that's my vision. And if I want to create that, I have to take responsibility for it. So I need to initiate affection and touch. I need to initiate feelings of closeness